hayo amanga lo mhlawumbe ufuna selection
Hi there, Anam and Jojo. Can you hear me?
Yes, you can.
Okay, you can. Okay. The class is only supposed to start at 5. So I'm just waiting for a few students still to come in. Is that all right with you?
Yeah, that's perfect.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thanks so much, Sipe. Okay, students, I think it's now 16:59. I'll just wait for another minute till it's 5 o'clock and then we can start. All right, let's do this. Control Shift O. Control Shift O. Okay, so there's my camera has been. You can no longer share videos. Hi, students. Before I get started, can CP perhaps tell me whether you can see me? Because it looks like my camera has been disabled, or any one of you.
I
Are
can
you
see
able?
you.
Oh, you
We can
actually.
see you, ma'am.
Oh, okay.
We
I'm
can
glad.
see you.
I'm always happy when students. I'm not good at not showing my face because I need you to see me because it's such a tricky, this online teaching with you not seeing me and I'm not seeing you. It just becomes too much for me as a lecturer. So yeah, I prefer it if you can see me in my bedroom. Well, it's a study cum bedroom. So yeah, no, it's nothing fancy, guys, but at least you can see my face, and that is all that's important to me. Okay, so I'm going to welcome you. I'm going to share my slides with you so that we can get started. There's just a few things that I would like you to know is that I have been experiencing here and there a bit of problems with my PowerPoint slides. My husband have been trying to figure it out. So if you can't see the PowerPoint slides as I'm sharing it, please let me know. Just unmute yourself and say, ma'am, we can't see it, or Natalie, I can't see it any longer. Okay. If you want to answer a question, just unmute yourself and also do the same. Guys, this is I don't like a difficult teaching situation, so we're going to make it easy for ourselves. Okay. So I am going to share my slides now with you.
Ma'am, I can't see you.
You can't see me.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, because I'm supposed to appear here somewhere. Let me just phone the administrator and say to him that my camera has been disabled and I'm not sure why. Okay, let me just see here. Just give him a call. Just give me a minute, guys, eh? Thank you.
Yeah, Avola. 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 Yeah. Okay.
Students, please take note that you must be on mute. I do not want to hear any voices at the back or noise. If you don't know how to mute yourself, please ask somebody because it's extremely disruptive for the other students in the classroom. So please, if you have to ask me a question, you can unmute yourselves. But for the most part,
Natalie,
yes.
your camera is activated.
But this, I've asked, you know, they say here, it's students, can you scan, because normally I can see myself a little bit when I'm with the students.
Now I can see you.
Oh, okay,
I
so you can, yeah?
It's just the initial and the yellow thingy.
Hmm.
It
But
just
you
shows
can,
that, no, ma'am, I can't see. It just shows your initials.
oh, you can't see me. Okay. Yeah, that's what they're saying. They can't see me. And I said,
If they can't see you, then perhaps students should exit and join again. But I just
okay.
joined now. I can see you perfectly with your. I think you're wearing a white and orange or something like that, white and red.
Yes, yes, yes. It's a very
See?
bright top. Okay, thanks so much, everyone. Eh? Okay, guys. Apparently, I'm seeing Goliath. Can you see me? Because I'm also can't hear anything. I'm also can't
Ma'am,
hear.
I can see you. I
Okay.
can see you, ma'am.
Oh, thank you, my sweetheart. I appreciate it. Look here, students. Most of students can see me. If you have a problem, go out of the Teams meeting and then come in again. Okay, I think that's
If you
gonna be
can't see yourself, maybe you must also then just rejoin, leave and rejoin. Because
okay.
maybe. Okay.
Okay, I will do that. I think that will be the best for now. Okay, perfect. Thanks, everyone.
You're muted, Natalie.
Sorry, I'm muted and unmuted myself, and my camera is on. So yes, I think we can start now, students. Thank you, everyone. Appreciate it. Let's share. Okay. Okay, so I am going to do it this way because sometimes I've noticed that sometimes the slides get confusing. So I'm sure the US students will be able to see what's written on here. It's lecturer information. Can someone just confirm that for me? Lecture information. Okay, perfect.
Yes,
So guys,
I can see, ma'am.
okay, thank you so much, my dear. I'm gonna go in and out of because when I go into the slideshow, sometimes the slides disappear. So I'm talking, I can see the slides, but you can't see it. So if it happens, just let me know, please. One of you unmute yourselves and let me know, and then I'll go back to out of slideshow, because I have to go out of slideshow certain times when I start typing and doing stuff on the computer. But for now, I'm going to do slideshow. And then, yes, I'm going to introduce myself. So my name is Natalie Lottering. I will be your academic literacy lecturer for this year. So you are ENG1504 students. And yes, what is academic literacy? Essentially, it's not really the content that you are doing in the classroom. What I focus on is more additional support that you might need. So the content is taught by my UNISA book. I believe you have tutors that's also doing their share. But what I will be lecturing is additional skills that you might need in the workplace one day, that you might need during your studies now. And so this is more of a support, an additional support lectures that I will be doing once a week at least for the next month, 2 months, month and a half to 2 months. And then, yeah, so that really is where I come in. And I think students need to appreciate these support programs because firstly, it's for free. As you can see my face. So I'm smiling currently. I can't even see myself because I've got the slideshow in front of me. But yeah, that is where we are looking at. So some of the stuff that the work that I will be sharing with you will be sometimes you can apply it to your studies, but you will also be able to apply it to the workplace, because I know that as much as I've students that are working, there are also students that still studying full time. So we're trying to almost like close that gap in terms of giving additional support so that students can feel comfortable when they go back to the work environment, when they enter the work environment one day, or during their studies now. So I hope that clears it up for you. So what will I be lecturing for 2025? I will be focusing on, firstly, language acquisition and communication theory. That is what I'm going to do with you tonight. And also, students, before I forget, if you've been in my lectures before, because this next 2 weeks I'm going to do the same thing for all my ENG classes. So if you've been here before, you can leave or you can stay. It doesn't matter, but I'm just saying to you, I have to do communication theory with my students this week, and then barriers to communication next week. Okay, so we're going to start off with language acquisition and communication theory. So we will talk about that really now. Next, I'm going to look at barriers to communication. So that would be, the first part is actually the ideal of communication, where you will hear the words where I will constantly say to you, but the ideal is that I want positive feedback from my audience, But then also next week, I'm going to look at the reality of life is that there are breakdowns in communication. There are barriers to communication, and how are we going to deal with that? Okay, then I must actually take out this language acquisition there, but you know that we're going to do that. Then I am going to do a little bit of verbal and non-verbal communication with you also. That's going to be very important for your journey to identify things. Then I'm going to do reading skills and a bit of note-taking. So reading skills are extremely important as a university student, because you have so many different things to read all the time. I mean, reading is your life at university. You go to my UNISA, you have to read online. You have to buy textbooks. Those textbooks are sometimes very dense, sometimes very difficult to understand. So reading skills are an important part of a student's life. And I think one of the things that students have come to realize that when I taught this was that, it's not like you just start with a textbook and start with page 1. There's pre-reading, there's prior reading, there's a lot of things that you have to do in order to understand and remember what you are reading, because those are the most important things there. Listening, very important, guys. I always say listening is a very underrated skill, because even in the schooling system, it's not focused on a lot. Before becoming a lecturer, I was an English teacher for about 9 years, and I remember that we did very little listening. So I'm going to do a little bit on listening so that we can, because it is a very important skill. Whatever we do, you are listening to me now, I will be listening at you later on. So yes, it's a very, very big skill. So again, what I will be doing is meetings. Yeah, very important part of your work that you will be doing. I mean, some of you are attending meetings on a regular basis, and reading meetings for me is it's very complex. It's actually not that easy as what people think it is, because there's so many things that you need to know about meetings. Firstly, you need to know how to send out the notice to the meeting. You need to know how to write minutes of a meeting. You need to know how to a chairperson's role, the secretary's role, the financial officer's role. There's a lot on meetings. The executive, what is a special meeting, proxy, quorum, there's meeting language that you need to understand. So meetings, I normally do, I've done quite a few short learning programs on the meetings where I go to companies and I present it to them. And yes, it's always good to get a refresher on the entire meetings thing. And if you have not done meetings within the schooling system, which I know you've just touched on, I have. I had twin boys in grade 12, so I kind of know what's happening in the schooling system in terms of what is being taught there. And I can tell you that meetings is just brushed over. So yes, we're going to do meetings. Then yes, your favorite thing, oral communication, presentation skills. Yes, a lot of students always feel overwhelmed about presentation skills, presenting in front of people. So I'm going to touch on that a little bit. Then business correspondence I will be doing as well. So how to deal with emails, how to deal with, what do they call it? Just getting your correspondence in general about business in order. Then online business presence, that's also a very important part, because online has become our life. I mean, I'm doing online teaching, and I would not have thought pre-2020, that this will be the norm. For UNISA, it was always been there, but not even at the level that we are doing it now. So online business presence, then employment communication. I think this is very much in line with what you guys are doing as ENG1504 students. Okay, so then what I'm also going to look at academic writing, a very big part of it. I mean, that's going to be your life. Academic writing is important. Then I'm going to do academic referencing. Yes. It's never going to go away. Those are things that you must always remember. That's going to be important in your life. I'm going to do report writing, another area which requires not just one session. I need 2 sessions to do that, because report writing is also going to be part of your life. Whether I'm assuming that you are all you want to move into an English language career field, or you want to know more about the English language, and report writing is very, very important. So when I teach the section, I actually start with a basic report, like a school report, but then we build on it. We build on it. Then we try and get the logic of the report. I always say to my students, there's a logic to report writing. And that logic goes for any report that you are going to write. And that's important. You understand that. So learning styles, that's also, I'm going to touch on that. And then later on, we'll do exam preparation. We don't have a lot of time this semester, so I can only touch on certain things. But that is the idea for the year, that you will get out of me. Okay, so I hope that you are fine with that. Okay, so look here, I am not sure about this information, but Avron, who's the coordinator, he does everything for these modules. It was mentioned that there will be you can have a one-on-one consultation with me, normally 30 minutes. You can contact Avron. He will then be able to guide you with this. Don't worry, students. These slides, I will send out a set of slides to students so that you can have it. So don't worry too much about the slides. You will get it. Okay. So what will be our objectives? Oh, okay. After studying these 2 sessions, you should be able to, can you still see, understand what is communication? Okay. So what is communication? Yeah.
I can't see the next slide. It's
Okay.
still
No,
short.
that's why I'm saying to you, let's go and then, yeah. Okay. So there, can you see the objectives there now?
Yes. Yes, we can.
Okay,
Sorry.
perfect. I'm going to do this for now till later on, hey? So you still see the big screen. You still see the screen, but I have to do this anyway if I'm going to type out certain things for you that I normally do with the students, okay? So after studying these 2 sessions, you should be able to understand what is communication. Okay, how children acquire a language. I think this is so important, especially when you study the English language. You need to know how students acquire language. I mean, it's fascinating how they do it, actually. So yeah, that's what we're going to look at. We're going to look at how to describe the communication process with the aid of a model. So communication theory with the aid of a model. I'm also going to look at possible barriers to communication. So we will be doing that a bit next week. Then I'm going to, let me just hide this thing from here. Okay, identify different communication purposes. So there are different communication purposes, and there's only 3, guys. In life, there's only 3 purposes when we communicate: to give facts, to give opinions, and the maintenance of goodwill. So we're going to discuss that again. There's not really many communication purposes, to be very honest with you. It's about facts, it's about opinions, and it is about the creation of goodwill, maintenance of goodwill. Next, you have to understand how verbal and nonverbal symbols are used to create meaning. Then I'm going to add the communication purposes. I'm going to add there, guys, medium. Sorry, I think I added in the other one, but not in this one. We're going to look at mediums. So it's verbal code mediums. We're going to look at message, and then we're going to look at feedback. Okay, so those are the things that we're going to focus on. Then we're going to look at explain the relationship between verbal and nonverbal codes again. Then understand how nonverbal symbols are used to create meaning. That's very important. And then explain the functions of nonverbal codes. So in general, guys, it's really what we're going to look at is about what is communication. Oh yeah, I added it. So I said we're going to look at if I go back there, mediums, message, feedback, and then the last one here that I'm going to add is context. Okay, I just added it on this page so we can. I'm actually just going to delete it now quickly, so that when I send it. So what is communication? I mean, this is you all studying English, and I don't know. Can I ask 1 or 2 of you, what was the reason why you decided to study, to do ENG 1501 or 1502? I've come to realize that I've never asked this question, or 1504. Can someone perhaps just guide me with that, students? Anyone? One deeper? And now, guys, in my classes, there's no incorrect answer. I swear, I am the easiest person to have as a lecturer because I'm not too concerned about, certain things here.
Can you please repeat your question?
Okay. Why did you decide to do ENG 1501, the English language modules?
I do ENG ENG1504.
Okay. Okay. So, and why did you register for it?
It was part of the module since I chose diploma of law, so it was part of the modules that I had to choose.
What law are you doing?
Diploma of law.
Oh, okay. Okay. So this is just a module that to add on to it.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you so much, Adam. Yes, I find it sometimes difficult because I don't see you. I can't ask you like quickly in the passage now, why are you doing this? Because there's no face-to-face communication. But anybody else that wants to mention this to me? Why they've registered specifically for the module? Ah, thank you, Macho Wandile. You can answer. Where are you? You've raised your hands. Your hand?
Yes, ma'am. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you clearly.
Well, it's actually for me personally, it's to help me like broaden my horizons in the English language because I found that in the workplace, the way that we speak and the way that we were taught English in school is not the same. So I thought maybe varsity level English will teach us more on the communication in the workplace and how to deal with communication itself in the
Okay,
workplace.
wonderful. Okay, so you wanted to know, you've come to realize that there's a gap in between what you were taught in the schooling system and at the university, and actually now you in the schooling system and at work, and you just wanted to broaden your horizons a little bit. Thank you so much for that answer. It's very informative for me. Okay, appreciate it. And somebody else also raised their hands? Yes. Somebody else? I saw someone raising their hand, and let me just see. There we go. One deeper. Antoni, do you know that your hand is raised? One deeper.
Hello, ma'am. How are you?
I'm good, and you, one deeper?
I'm good, thank you, ma'am. ENG1504 was part of the module because I am doing tourism management, and then it was part of the modules. But now that I am doing it, I realized that I need more like learning in English, like how to write letters, how to write reports, because I didn't know how to write all those things. But now that I am learning it in ENG1504, now I am gaining experience. Thank you,
Okay.
ma'am.
Thank you so much, Wandipa. Thank you for that. The next one, we have another lady that raised their hand, or guy that raised their hand. Yeah, maybe your device is, Fasile was the one guiding me. I'm reading the meeting chats. Thank you, Fasile, for telling me I must go. Zanele? Zanele? You raised your
Hello,
hand.
ma'am. Hello, ma'am.
Hi, how are you?
I'm doing good, thank you. How are you?
I'm well, my dear.
Okay, well, for me, as I have registered for ENG1504, well, as a law student, I have realized that I need to be able to write clearly, and I need to actually to write logically. And ENG1504, it actually supports me in developing these skills, actually for both my future legal career and for just understanding English in general.
Okay. Thank you so much, Zanele. You've given me great insights. So it seems to me that the idea is that you are already in the workplace, or you're studying a specific course. I've now heard 2 law students, and then other students that are saying that in the workplace they sometimes battle with the language of the battle with English, to how to write certain things. And yes, I hope I can be of support. My instruction was given that I must be the language, what do they call it? I'm the contractor for what is it, language development almost. So I'm not sure how of what help I can be, but we'll try and do as much as we can so that you can just get a broader knowledge when it comes to the English language and the expectations from the English language. We will do some writing sessions as well here and there. I might not have time to do it this semester because I need to get the theory out, but we'll definitely try and do it next semester. I'm very grateful that this is a year course, because if it was a semester course, we would have been in trouble. But it's a year course, so I have a bit of time with you. Okay, so I'm going to go back to my slides. Let me just, because it's important that I don't miss. Okay, so normally when it comes to teaching, and sometimes I feel this way, I am a much better face-to-face teacher. So I like sitting in the classroom. I've always loved being in front of the classroom and teaching my students. But, you know, unfortunately, that's not the case. I have to sit online. And yes, the only way I feel I'm connecting with you as a lecturer is because you can see my body language and you can see the back of the bedroom that I use, and so forth, you know. So it's actually a bedroom study. So nothing fancy, guys. I always say to my students, I don't care where you come from. I don't care what schools you've been through, etc., etc. In this classes, we are all here to learn together. And there is no incorrect answer that I'm going to chastise you on. But why did you say that? That was so stupid. No, that's not in my nature. My nature is that if you have made an attempt to answer a question, I'm very grateful. You understand that. And yes, students, there are going to be times that I say to you, please unmute yourself to do this and that. I'm even going to ask you by the session number 2 or 3 to put on your video camera so that unmute your, so, is it unmute your video? What they call it? Yes, your video, so that I can see faces. You know, I'm curious sometimes to see faces. And I've done this in the past where I've told students, please, can I see you quickly, like just for a second or a minute or so. And I've seen students studying, sitting in their beds, you know, doing this module, and then they look so cozy, and I would say to them, you know, you look comfortable, and that's all that's important to me. So yeah, just a bit of a few things that you must take note of. So so the year we have me, you know, with this is what sometimes can happen with communication, and please, I know this happens, is that what you think they're thinking. So I'm the lecturer and I'm thinking, wow, my students get it, you know, now they know that I'm the academic literacy lecturer, and I'm thinking to myself, and the second student is saying, this is so cool, this is like fabulous, you know, and then the third student would be saying, can't wait to get started. And some of the fourth student might be saying, I'm learning so much. Wow, yeah, that maybe you're feeling that way today. But sometimes this is what students are actually thinking, you know. Was there chips in the canteen today? The second one, was homework due today? Third one, someone just texted me. And the fourth one, is he growing a mustache? So yes, you know, communicate. Sometimes we can get lost with communication, especially with these types of classes. But as I've said, the idea is as a support group and so forth, you know, to help you. So whoever's doing most of the talking, so I'm doing the most. Then the cartoon says, yeah, I wonder if my teacher or lecturer gets tired of saying wah, wah, wah all day. And I can answer that question. Do we get tired? Yes, sometimes we get tired. But yeah, it's my responsibility as the sender of this message today, because you need to remember the words that I'm using. The sender of this message today is that you, who's my audience, you know, to make sure that at least you understand a little bit about language acquisition and about communication theory, because that's the important part. So please just bear with me for now. And then theory, yeah. I wonder if yeah, theory. Can you guys see the slides? Yes, you can. Eh? So when we are born, we communicate. You communicate with those around you. So babies tend to cry if they get hungry. Isn't that so? They cry when they get hungry. If they have discomfort, they also cry. If the parent needs to change their nappy or pampers, they cry. So even babies communicate from the day that they are born. They cry. And on the other hand, if they are happy, you will see smiles on their faces. You will hear them giggling, etc., etc. In other words, people communicate intuitively. Intuitively means sometimes we don't even know where, you've just heard like a big word, as people would call it. And then you say to yourself, I know stuff, you know what I mean? But in other words, people communicate intuitively without ever studying communication. And that's true, When we study communication, we examine theoretically. So what do we examine? What does theoretically means? It means that, so theory is a way of explaining and understanding a process that happens in the real world. And that is what we are going to do now with you with language acquisition. I'm going to introduce you to a few theorists so that you can see how a child acquires a language for now. And, oh, goodness me. Okay, sorry. Someone is trying to phone me and it comes on my, sorry about that. I'll just tell her that I'm in a class. Maybe just, okay. In a class. Yeah, and switch off the volume entirely. Sorry, guys. My WhatsApps go to my phone. So if you heard something, it's me, but I've switched it off now. So theory is a way of explaining and understanding a process that happens in the real world. Okay, so we're going to talk about theories. Theory is basically, you've heard of Newton's theory, where he has said for every action, there's a reaction, or, different types of theories. I don't know all these, but I'm going to introduce you to English language theorists and what they have to say. So a theory is basically where there's a scientist or researcher. If you're going to do a master's or PhD, or you're going to do your honors, you are going to have to learn how to deal with different theorists, okay? Because these theorists have done their research on communication theory. So they can now conclude that because we have done the research, we are theorists, we've done the research, this is now what we can say to you happens when you communicate with somebody else, okay? So let's go further. So this is a very important, Stephen Krashen. I love this quote where he says, language acquisition does not require extensive use of conscious grammatical rules and does not require tedious drills. A very important one there. There's a difference between language acquisition and language teaching. How you acquire language obviously will be different different than how you were taught a language in the schooling system. So very important point there. So there's a difference between learning a language and acquiring a language. So that's a big one there. So I'm not even going to go through this part because I think it's sometimes just confusing. So I'm going to start with the theorist, okay? So there was these theorists called the behaviorist. So please, again, theorist is important. If you've heard the word before, then you will know that is the way it works. Oh my goodness. Where is my slides? Oh, okay. So I think this one, just give me a minute there, guys. I think I taught this morning and then the slides must have moved. Okay, but that's fine. Yes. So behaviorists are basically people that says, so I'm starting with a behaviorist. The behaviorists are people that says that how a child acquires a language. This is what they believed in, hey? And Brooks, 1960, and Lardo, 1960 to 64, they were the big behaviorists. And they said the way a child acquires a language is, they normally copy what the parent says. So they imitate, they copy what the parent says. And then if the parent says, you are pretty, for example, you are pretty girl, And then the child will practice and says, I am, not maybe not I, because you want exactly. Natalie is the lecturer. Natalie is a lecturer. So that is what the parent will say. The child will then copy what the parent says, and the child will repeat what the parent says. Natalie is a lecturer. Okay. Then there's going to be the parent will then positive praise this child. You know, the praise will say, oh, wonderful. You know how that Natalie is a lecturer. And you know, and so the behaviorist says that because this become then the child will then repeat what is being said, and then that will become habit formation. So the behaviorist said this is how language is acquired when a child grows up. Let's say the child is 2 to 5 years old, because that's normally the period where language gets acquired. Okay. So the child will imitate. So the parent will say, Natalie is a teacher. And then the child will repeat, Natalie is a teacher. Then the parent will praise the child and say, oh, wonderful, you've done so well. And then the child will repeat this over and over again. So what they are saying is that the way a child acquires a language is by copying what the parent says. It's by repeating what the parent says. It's by praising. The parent will praise the child, and we will repeat this. Okay, and this was the belief system of how language acquisition actually works. This is how a child acquires a language. And then the behaviorist then says the way that the child acquires it is by emphasizing mimicry. So mimicry would be, you know, when you mimic what the parent says, and then the child will memorize what the parent says, and then you will, and so forth. So again, there's that copying that happens. The imitation, the child says, Natalie is a lecturer. The child will practice it by repeating, Natalie is a lecturer. The parent will positive reinforce it by praising it. And then this will become habit forming. Okay, so they believe that use of language drills, you know, there's language drills that happen. And there's this repeating language structures to make them automatic and habitual, meaning that, you know, it's automatic and habitual, regular. It means that that child will then remember everything that's going on. Okay, so, these are the behaviorists. So one thing that was a problem with what the behaviorist was saying, let me just make sure. Okay, one thing that was a problem with what the behaviorist was saying is that, let me just get my slides. Behaviorist continues. Behaviorist, however, there was a problem with this theory of theirs, you know, because remember, they have done research on this, and this is how they believe. This is the method that they use, that says that a child first, you know, imitate, they copy what the parent says, then they repeat it, and then they praise the child, and then the child then memorize and repeat it again and again and again. So what the problem with that theory is that it does not explain how children are able to say things they've never heard before, or how it's possible that children can make logical mistakes. Like some children would say, you know, they don't necessarily know the right word, but yeah, a child haven't heard a word before. I had my nephew here, and apparently I said something, and he's like 4, 5, and he was saying to me, but why are you repeating what you've said earlier? I'm thinking, where did this child hear the word repeating? That's a big word for a 5-year-old, but you know, the kids are quite advanced. But it made me think, you know, where did he hear this word? And if we are going to follow the behaviorist theory, where a child only acquires a language when they, you know, copy and then imitate and then praise and then repeat it again, then that doesn't make sense, you know. So, and also what was very confusing for a lot of theorists was that, or a lot of people studying children, was that how is it that children can make logical mistakes? For example, I mean, they would say mices. Because we're not going to speak about mices as adults to our children. We're going to say mouse. Okay, or we're going to say mice, because mouse will become mice, isn't that? But we're not going to say mices. So if we're following the behaviorist trend, how can they make mistakes, you know, logical mistakes? We're not going to, sometimes children like saying hold it, they like adding an ed to their sentences. It should be held, but hold it. And I'm not going to be a parent that's going to say, please hold it, or this cup, you know, or anything like that. I'm not going to say swimmed, I'm going to say swam, you know. I'm not going to say tooths, I'm going to say teeth or tooth. But tooth makes no sense, because the singular form will be teeth and the plural form will be tooth. But yet this child is saying tooths. The parent did not say these words, but yet they're making logical mistakes, okay? So that was a problem with the behaviorist. And then there is now the new device. So just give me a minute. I swear all of my slides moved. So the language acquisition device is what now is important. And this is going to be the theorists. There's a new theorist, and they call themselves innatist, the innatism. So the innatists are essentially a group of theorists that believes, guys, that believe that a child does not acquire language like the behaviorist says they acquire language. The child actually acquires a language differently. So the second group of theorists that came in, and they said that Chomsky said, and Chomsky, if you're going to study languages one day, Chomsky is going to be a very important theorist that you need to remember, okay? He's still alive today, as far as I know, and he already said in 1959, argues that a behaviorist cannot provide sufficient explanation for children's language acquisition for the following reasons. They can't. You know, they said, no, this thing that you are saying that they must imitate and then they must copy and you must praise and repeat, it makes no sense. You know, so this is what they are saying. Argues that behaviorists cannot provide sufficient explanation for children's language acquisition for the following reasons. There are three things that they say. Children know more about language structure than they could learn. And that's really how it works. Somehow a child knows that a noun, a verb, and there's an object. You know, somehow there's a subject, a verb, and there's an object. A parent who's not proficient in that, it's not going to say, well, this is a subject, this is a verb, and this is an object. They just know about structure of a language more than they could learn from anyone. That is, but the children know more about language structure than they could learn based on what they hear. So if you're saying it's based on what they hear from the parent, then they know way, way more than what we could ever think of. And then they also said children are not systematically corrected and instruction on languages by parents. So a lot of children might make a mistake and then parents don't systematically correct them because it's not part of who they are as a parent, you know. So again, the behaviorists, because if the behaviorists were correct, they would have said, oh, the child would copy, the child will repeat, the child will be praised. So the parent is not going to automatically praise this child, you know. It's not going to automatically correct the child for every sentence that a child speaks. Another thing that the innatist says, because remember the first theory is the behaviorist and the second theorist would be your innatism. And then they said children are exposed to language that include false starts, incomplete sentences, yet they learn to distinguish between grammatical sentence, correct and incorrect sentences. That's also true. You know, sometimes when we speak, I always say speaking would be very different than talking. And I did this example with one of my classes that I had earlier. And I said to them, this is what happens when we talk. In fact, I did it with them. Okay, I can just put in the example. Sorry, guys. It just helps when I do this because I have different groups. Okay, so the example there would be... and so forth. So the example would be, if I ask one of you, you know, what time did you wake up this morning? Okay, you will answer me 7 a.m. You know, you're just going to give me a basic answer because the spoken text is very short and to the point. Isn't that so? Why is the spoken text shorter? Because I normally are able to see you. You know, I can hear all those little context things that comes with a spoken text. So I don't have to say much. So what time did you wake up this morning? And you might answer and you would say 7 a.m. And then I would say, what time is the ENG1504 class? Now, you would say to me, your answer would be 7 o'clock till 9 o'clock. Okay, so it's the same thing. What time will you go to bed tonight? And you might say 10 a.m. Is that clear? Now, you see, with children, this is the spoken text. It's only a few words. And this is what they are saying, you know. When we look at this one here, children are exposed to language that includes false starts, incomplete sentences. Yes, when people speak, they don't necessarily speak in incomplete sentences all the time, but yet they learn to distinguish between grammatically correct and incorrect sentences. So I just made an example with the other class to say to them, you know, when we speak, it's much easier to speak than to write, because when you write out that sentence, obviously you will have to say the following. So Mrs. Lottering wants to know what time I woke up this morning. Can you say how many more words are being used here, because I'm now writing it, eh? So Mrs. Lottering wanted to know what time I woke up this morning, and I responded that I woke up at 7 a.m. In addition, she also wanted to know when the ENG1504 class will be starting. And she said that it will start at 5 o'clock. She finally wanted to know what time I will go to bed tonight, and I responded that I will go to bed at 10 o'clock. So again, you know, it's almost like what the innatists are saying is that, you know, when a child can contextualize certain things, that means that a child is learning. So if we are going to follow the behaviorist theory, how do we explain the difference between speaking and writing, for example? But these are just examples that I'm giving you. So the innatists believe, this is what they believe. They believe that children are biologically programmed for language. So what do we mean with that? That language develops in the child in the same way of other biological functions. And that's true. How do we mean language acquisition? This is what they're saying, that it's just like we're learning to walk, a child learns to speak. So learning to speak equals learning to walk. Language acquisition, learning to speak equals learning to walk. So how does a child start walking? The child gets born. By a certain period, the child is expected to start crawling. Then one day you see by certain months, the child just gets up and the child starts walking. No parent has gone onto the floor to teach this child how to crawl and walk. It's something in their DNA that allows them to walk and then crawl, to crawl and then walk. And so they are saying, the innatists are saying, it's exactly the process, the same process as learning to speak, okay? And what do we mean like that? So they believe that language acquisition is a language acquisition device that a child has. They actually call it language acquisition device. It's an innate language ability. It's like a black box containing universal grammatical principles that apply to human languages. And that's so true. So they say, just like you learn to walk, that's exactly how you acquire a language. There's like a box, a blank box where the child gets born, and then suddenly, because we're now speaking, we know that the child cries and they smile and so forth, but when they start speaking, there's almost like there's these things that happen in their brains, unlike what the behaviorists are saying. Okay, so they say there's an innate language ability is like a black box containing universal grammatical principles. So sorry, students, that apply to human languages. Okay, so what do they mean with that? They say that a language acquisition device is where So there's this language acquisition device in this child's head, this black box, okay? And because of that black box, a child then, by 3 months, a child will be cooing and gurgling, you know, trying to speak, you know? And then by 6 months, they will be babbling. By 12 months, they will be their first words that they will be saying, you know, mama, dada, go, go, you know, those types of things. Then by 18 months, this child actually will know 5 to 40 words. Where does that come from? You know, does it apply to what the behaviorists are saying? That that's impossible, that a child at 18 months can know 5 to 40 words. If they're saying that the child is copying and repeating and a positive praise and then memorize, that it doesn't make sense. Okay, so essentially, you have to, so by 18 months, a child will know 5 to 40 words. By 2 years, a child will actually know 150 to 300 words. They will even be able to use 2 to 3 word sentences. Look here, this is not going to be perfect sentences. Remember what the doctor, what the native says earlier. Sometimes learners have when they speak, they have false starts. You know, by 3 years, they will know 900 to 1,000 words. They will be able even to ask short questions. By 4 years, they will know 2,000 words. So that's 5+ word sentences. And by 5 years, they will have identified letters. That's preschool, first grade 1, pre-primary, and then identify letters, creates longer sentences. So this is actually what the innatists are saying, that there's this big black box that just like a child learns how to walk, the child acquires a language, and they have done their research on it. They have theorists to prove. Chomsky is one of the theorists that believes in the system, and they said this is how a child acquires a language. Okay, so so that's important. Okay, so when we are going to look at your universal grammar, okay, then evidence to support innatism. So this is what virtually all children successfully learn their mother tongue at a time in their life when they would not be expected to learn something else so complicated. So it has to be biologically programmed, and that's exactly what the innatists are saying. I mean, you have witnessed this yourself. You have gone through it yourself. If a child grows up in a isiXhosa household, you know, the way that child can pick up the isiXhosa language is amazing. And even in an Afrikaans household, the same thing, because they hear the mother tongue, but they are also biologically programmed to actually acquire words, acquire sentences at certain ages. So that explains that for you. Okay, there are just things about universal grammar. And so the universal grammar is that black box that we were talking about, the language acquisition device. Eh? So the universal grammar is basically just that all of us, if we are born, it doesn't matter whether you are born into a Chinese household, a Russian household, an American household, a South African household, you all programmed to have this universal grammar that we developed because of what the language that we hear, the mother tongue language that we hear. You know what I mean? And that essentially is what allows us to learn this language. So the universal grammar may be present and available to second language learners, but its exact nature has been altered by prior acquisition of the first language. So I don't want you to, I just want you to understand this, né? Is that I'm more focused on the acquisition of a first language, because the first mother tongue language, that means the language that a child hears from day of birth, essentially around them. And so the second language, child's second language needs to be learned, because that doesn't come naturally. They need to go into the schooling system and they will learn a second language. Okay. And then let me go further. So now there's another group of theorists that says, well, yes, we love what the innatists are saying, but we also want to add something, okay? Now, this is the third group of theorists, and they are called the interactionalism, sorry. So they are called the interactionalists, and they are saying, yes, we believe, just like the innatists, like Chomsky and them says, we believe that children learn their first language through a combination of innatism, so, you know, the universal language principles, the black box, all of those. We believe what the innatists are saying, but we also feel that there are environmental factors that must be considered. And that is a very, very important point that I would like you to make there. The interactionalist says that yes, we believe in innatism, but we also feel that environmental factors are important. In what way? So let's say a child from Afrikaner boy grows up in an area where there is it Xhosa, because of the environment, that person that we would have believed would be Afrikaans speaking will now pick up the indigenous language that they are surrounded in. If you are born in China and that's all you hear, you only hear Mandarin as a baby and so forth, you will pick up the language very quickly, because the age group where a child acquires a language is between 2 to 6 years old. You know, they pick up a language just like that. You know, and especially if you take the environmental factors into consideration, that it's so amazing to see how a child can just develop a language so quickly. But we as adults struggle with that, hey? When we try to learn a new language, it's not that easy for us, because our brains have been developed already in a certain mindset in terms of our first language, okay? So a child's inborn capacity to develop language is crucial. And a language a child hears from adults in in his or her world. It's crucial, because what happens, because we have this universal, the black box, we have universal grammar, we have what the native says, that suddenly, you know, the box will be filled, but also the child will pick up from adults and other people that are here in the world, you know. So it's very different from what the behaviorists are saying, in saying that they only pick up things from what the parent are hearing, okay? So, and so I think with this point, I made a point with the other group earlier, and I'm not sure whether you would agree with me, that when it comes to the first language, guys, and I mean, I'm a big proponent of mother tongue education. I believe that a child should be taught in the language that they hear as a child, because once they are taught in a language that they hear as a child, and they have their subjects in school as a language, you know. So for example, what the Afrikaners did in our country and what you hear in other countries, for example, you'll never see a Chinese prime minister speak in English. You'll speak in Mandarin, or what else is there? North Korean, South Korean, they speak in their languages, okay? But there is a reason why mother tongue education is important, because if you are taught in your mother tongue, you know what I mean, your mother tongue is so developed well, then it is easier to actually learn a second language. Because in order for you to learn a second language, you need to have a well-developed first language. So I'm just going to use Afrikaans speaking people, because a lot of them, from the day that they are born in the household, sometimes they speak Afrikaans with the parents, they go to school, they have their subjects in Afrikaans, they do life skills in Afrikaans, they do physics in Afrikaans, they do pure maths in Afrikaans. I mean, the only time that child actually hears English sometimes is maybe on TV, when they listen to the radio or TV or online, you know, while they're busy with TikToks and so forth. But the child virtually only listens 90% of the child, what the child does is in the mother tongue. And so because of that, and that language is then developed to a language that goes up to grade 12. And then, you know, there are now universities that continues with the Afrikaans language, for example. Those students are actually better English speaking second language students, because the reason why that happens is because they have such a well-developed first language. Okay, so I've had German friends, very good friends in Germany that came from Germany. And I remember asking them, he was married to a Ukrainian wife. And I remember asking them, okay, so now German, obviously the child will take on the mother tongue, in this case of the father, you know, so the mother tongue will be German. And I said, second language? And then they said, no, the second language will be Ukrainian. And then the third language will be English. And I said, wow, how absolutely exciting, you know, this is, because now we have a person that's not so, you know, obsessed with English as the mother tongue. They believe that the child must understand the language, develop the language in the schooling system, etc. Because what we are doing with our students, and this I find to be, this is just my opinion, guys. Please don't butcher me for this. But what I find is that if we can just have a situation in South Africa, and I know what's going to be the some of you, what people are maybe going to say, but I want you to say what you need to say, is that if our children can just be taught in their mother tongue, you know, because this is what the innatisms are saying. This child, or the actionists are saying, is that this child has this language acquisition device, and everything is thrown at the age of 2, 3, 4, 5, you know. And so when they go to the schools, they already have language straight in their heads. Language is possibly one of the things that they have under control. But what happens with the indigenous languages is that, you know, you take it up, and then I think in grade 1 to 3 they still do the indigenous languages, but then they subtract, they take it away, and then suddenly English is introduced. And that's sometimes a problem, because I find that because of that reason, you know, there's not a well-structured, a well-developed first language that the child has developed, so that when the child, because if that child does well within the isiXhosa language, or Zulu or Tswana, whatever languages, indigenous languages that we have in South Africa, it means that that child doesn't now have to grapple with the English language. They have the indigenous languages. The question papers are set in the indigenous languages, answered in indigenous languages. So one day, when they at the schooling, in the schooling system, if they have to acquire a second language, it's not going to be that difficult for them to do it. Now, I know I'm going to have 1 or 2 of you that's going to object to this, so I want to hear your opinions about it. Can you explain this to me? You can just unmute yourself. I've had other students that gave me very interesting comments on this. So students, this is your time to open up. What do you think about mother tongue education in South Africa? Oh, sorry, Mohammed. Okay, no, it's fine, Mohammed. You can leave and pray. Guys, what do you think about what I've just said? Do you believe in mother tongue education in South Africa, that we should have it? Anyone that wants to respond? And please, there's no wrong answers in terms of the say. There's no wrong answers in terms of that. Okay. So anyone would like to respond? Yes. Hola. Thank you. Okay, you can unmute yourself.
Hello, ma'am. How are you?
I'm good, and you?
I'm fine. Ma'am, I think it's a very important lesson that you taught us today. Because if, for example, I'm a Xhosa person, I have to study further, maybe from grade R to other grades. The problem is I have to convert first.
Yes.
I have to convert the English first. I have to understand when I do translation from Xhosa to English first before I study the English.
Yes.
And then other people, they don't teach they don't translate for the children's. What is this in Xhosa? What is this in English? What is this in other language? So that's why most of the children fails.
Yes.
And they struggle because if they are taught at school English, when they come back at home, they just give them the Xhosa every now and then when they go back to school, they will struggle.
Absolutely.
And I think
absolutely.
if ever we can be taught in our language, we can develop the masters of everything.
Yes. Thank you very much for your opinion about that. I know that there are other students that have opposing opinions, and you are more than welcome to share them as well. Yeah, it's an open market. We don't. Thank you, Cora. I appreciate that. Anybody else that has a different opinion about this, you can raise your hand. Let me just go through. Just see. Ntombela. Thank you so much. Kane Ntombela. That's what I see on the screen. You can unmute yourself.
Hi, ma'am.
Hi, my dear.
Hi, ma'am.
How can I get?
Am I audible enough?
Yes, you are audible enough. Just speak a little bit louder, if you don't mind.
Okay. I hope you're well. But I do have an objection.
Okay.
I believe it is fine that we study in English, because as we study in English in our lower grade, like primary, high school, we develop our in English, making it easy for us to work with other people who speak different languages, as we have a common language that we all know, that we were taught in our workplaces and in tertiary education. So I think we should stick with learning in one common language.
Okay. Thank you so much, Ntombela. I don't know what's your name, so I'm just saying whatever I see on the screen. Anyone else? So she's saying it's better to learn through the English language. It's a common language and so forth. Anybody else that wants to view their viewpoint? Zanele.
Hello again, ma'am.
Hi, my dear.
Okay, well, actually, this was a very interesting lesson, and I learned a lot. Well, actually, in my opinion, like about kids, about like how they acquire like language. Actually, for me, I'm Xhosa, so I'm speaking from what I've realized, I've observed. I've like noticed that like actually kids like they actually learn language like if they grow up like around like people around like a big group of family, like where there are kids, there are grandmothers, mothers, sisters. So they actually like learn language just by hearing like different people talking and speaking. They learn those little words, and then and on this other specific day you hear them saying a word, you're like, oh, how did you know that? And you're like, okay, fine. So they listen like while you are talking, while you're doing things. Maybe when you're talking to someone else, they just observe, they just listen. And then on a random day, you just hear them like saying that word. You're like, oh, you know what? How do you know that? You know, even if sometimes they just say a word, like they don't even know what that word means, but they say it. You're like, how do you know that? What's that word? What does it mean? You know? So
yes.
Actually, it's like that for me. Like how I've observed children, like how actually they acquire, how do they actually get to know some other words.
Absolutely. And that's because of the language acquisition device. Yeah, you can continue.
Yes. And actually, I feel like actually it's very important, like for children to be taught English in earlier grades, because most kids like they be taught like Xhosa in like maybe in their earlier grades, and when they go to primary, that's when that's the first part when they are like taught English, and some of them they struggle a lot because it's not their mother tongue, so they just struggle to learn English, and which like affects them when they are moving on. They should like, and I feel like if for if maybe they have like someone like they stay with who can teach them like just new words of English and for them to know what it means, that kind of helps.
Yes,
Yes,
absolutely. Thank you so much for giving me your feedback. I appreciate it. Yes, it's very, thank you so much. You know, when we're looking at the language acquisition device, I remember I said to you that between the ages of 2 and 6 or so, a child acquires a language and so forth. And that's normally what they hear in the community. You know what I mean? And that's a language that they are well equipped in, they move with that language. And my opinion has always been, guys, that if we could develop if we could develop Afrikaans up until a language of grade 12, you know, they found the words in South Africa. Why is it that we can't do that for our own mother tongue education? Because as Paula has said earlier, the problem with the schooling system is that they confusing these children. You know what I mean? They're confusing the children because now the children hears, for example, Xhosa at home, then they go to the school and then they hear maybe a little bit of Xhosa, and then the Xhosa gets taken away in grade 3, and then they start with English. You have actually destroyed, you know, the ability for that child to read now in isiXhosa and in English, because sometimes it's again too late for that child to develop a mother tongue. And if you take the mother tongue away when the child is like 8 years old or 9 years old, I think when they're in grade 3, it really creates a problem, and it creates a different problem, because Tola says, and I believe this, guys, you know, I'm going to get a lot of pushback from students because they believe that English must be the language of learning and teaching, and I keep on saying to them, why, guys, why? You know, there's no country in the world that they're so proud of their first languages, their mother tongue. You understand that? And so by not developing any of those languages, because now the Xhosa, for example, is taken away from the child at 9. The child heard this language, suddenly it's taken away. The child hears the language at school, English now at school, but then they go out and they go into their communities and they hear again isiXhosa a lot of times, because that's what the parents say, speak, and whatever speaks. You understand? It destroys that child's ability in terms of functioning in their mother tongue. And I have seen this, you know, so many times with Afrikaans students. And I'm not talking about, I'm just using it as an example. I'm not saying that they're better than anyone else, but because some of them have had a full functioning first language, it was easier for them to switch over to English, because this that you guys are doing here now, this has been going on. I mean, I was English mother tongue. You know, my mother was English, my father was Afrikaans. Okay, so I heard most languages the most, but I mostly heard English like more than anything else. And I remember I have so many friends that were Afrikaans speaking, and they would all be Afrikaans speaking. You know, they went to Afrikaans schools because those years it was Afrikaans was very prominent. And what happened was those students would then go to universities, and then at the university the language would change over to English. You understand that? But those students still did okay because the Afrikaans was so well developed that it was easier to switch to English. Why are we not saying that English should become the second language? Why are we not saying that isiXhosa should be developed and let's have English as the second language that you now will be able to do well in because you have a well-developed first language? That is what research says. You understand that? And I'm not using, I just like to debate stuff sometimes with my students, you know, just to get their opinions about things. But yeah, why are we not then allowing these students to carry on with the language, you know, the language that their mother tongue, the language that they hear? Because let's get real. Let's get real. Those children, even if they go to English speaking schools, you know, schools, they still speak their mother tongue when they're around in groups. They still speak their mother tongue when they go to meet Gogo or whatever. You get what I'm talking about there. So it's just something to think about, guys. I always find this to be a very interesting debate. Goliath, Goliath, you may unmute yourself.
Good evening, everyone. I just wanted to actually add on to what you have said, Natalie, with regards to the, the change of the languages and so forth in terms of your setting. I think what our schooling system is also not understanding is that with you speaking your mother tongue, it creates a sense of community. You can relate. You understand each other, a bond, right? So now, as you grow older, I can also speak from my personal experience. I come from an Afrikaans speaking house, but went to an English school. So I got to university my first year because I was studying journalism before. So I was quite insecure in having to speak in front of people, because now it's like this major change happening from, coming from a household where I'm continuously speaking Afrikaans, and now I'm in the environment that demands me to speak English all the time. So it's that confidence also that kind of gets affected. Like, imagine having a 2-year-old feeling lesser because now they're not as fluent in English compared to another child that is exposed to English more at home, So I just want to add on to that.
Absolutely, absolutely. And you know what, students, I'm glad we're having this debate. I always say, and I mean, Kola, I will come back to you because you made such a good point. You first have to translate. You know what I mean? And then you have to now figure out, okay, what is this going on? Because you know what, students, research has shown, and I'm actually doing it with your class because you are the students that's more in the professions, different career fields. A student, in order for a student to develop a language well, they have two differences. I'm going to do it maybe later on with you, but I'm going to mention it today. It's something that they call BICS and CALP, okay? So BICS is what they call basic interpersonal communication skills. It's very, very basic. If I go to my slides again, I can show you what I mean with that. I can open a new slide. Okay, I must not, because the slides are driving me insane. Okay, let me do this rather. Okay, and take this out and take this out. There's a reason why I'm doing this. Okay, so it's what they call it BICS and they call it CALP. Okay, and then CALP. So what BICS is your basic interpersonal communication. Don't worry, I'll fix that. Skills, okay? And CALP is what they call cognitive language. It's cognitive academic language proficiency skills. Okay, just skills. So if I go to BICS and CALP, for example, hey, for a child to be, because ideally we want CALP, we want cognitive academic language skills. Is that clear? This is what is this guy's name? I wasn't going to do this with you today. What is his name? The theorist. Oh my goodness. Okay, but I'll find it for you again. Sorry, guys. It just slipped my mind. But there's a theorist that have developed this basic interpersonal communication skills. So what they are saying is that when we just speak to each other normally, you'll find, I mean, I would meet a lot of people that speak indigenous languages and they speak well. But what happens is that they have, because the first language has been taken away almost. What they then develop is what they call basic interpersonal communication skills. Now, in order for you to be able to deal with dense, like difficult concepts, sometimes writing emails, structuring things, you actually need cognitive academic language proficiency skills. Okay, so what do we mean with that? It means that you must be so proficient in a first language, a well-developed first language, You understand that in order for you to deal with the cognitive reality of mathematics, of physics, of whatever. I mean, a lot of guys, people say to me, but ma'am, you know how our languages cannot be developed. We don't have words. I say that's absolute nonsense. If people can develop, other languages have developed, there's words for every word. You know, what we need is that our history of, of our country has actually made it easier for one language to be developed and not the others. But we can still do that if we really want. Cummins, sorry, I found the name. It's Cummins, the surname. Cummins, I'll speak to you about it again. I was thinking, what's the theorist's name? But so essentially, if a child, is so involved in their first language, have it developed in different, your physics in your mother tongue, then there's no need for the translation to take place. Can you imagine how unfair it is, guys, that a child who grows up in an English household, or even another let's say even an Afrikaans household, sometimes, even Afrikaans is becoming more confusing now because they speak Afrikaans at home and then they speak English at school, and that also creates its own conundrums, But let's say a child that's English in the household, parents speak English, they go to school, they hear English, that child doesn't have to struggle with cognitive academic language skills. It's in them already. It's the language acquisition devices have been activated. The black box have been activated. But what are we doing with our other class students? They start off with Xhosa, then suddenly Xhosa is done for 3 years to grade 1 to 3, then it's taken away from them, and then suddenly the only time that they sometimes hear English is at school, and they still, hi guys, this is so unfair. It's so unfair. And for me, as a language specialist, I've had so many resistance to it, because I know what students are going to say. Ma'am, we have too many languages to develop. We can look at provinces. Who speaks isiXhosa the most in the East? What language do they speak the most in the Eastern Cape? It's Xhosa. So let's then have at least a protection for some of our students, rather than actually creating a mess for all of us, for so many, such a big group of our students. It's just my opinion, guys. You don't have to agree with me, but this is the reality. If you hear your mother tongue in the schooling system at home, you develop cognitive academic language proficiency skills, and those skills will make it easier for you to actually understand everything that's answered in a question paper, whether that physics paper or pure maths paper or life sciences paper is in isiXhosa. You have already developed the cognitive academic language proficiency skills. But what we are doing is that our students develop what they call basic interpersonal communication skills, and that's just sad. And you know what, guys? There are only 9 countries in the world that speaks English as a first language. We believe if you go to Italy one day, you're not going to hear English, because those people, they have different dialects of Italian and so forth, but they speak the language. In our case, we can look at provinces and see how we can develop that. We can make it easier for our students, because at the moment, we are not being fair to our indigenous language students. That's my belief system. You can disagree with me about it, but that's how I believe. Do you have any opinion about that now, guys? Do you agree, disagree? It's lovely to have these discussions in between. Anyone? Ntombela. There's a Leandra. I'm going to call, okay, Kola again. Yeah, you can speak.
Hello. Okay.
Yeah.
Ma'am, I'm just thinking the communication in English, and then as a person that you want to communicate, there's something that you want to communicate with someone that doesn't know, maybe it's, the English is not the mother tongue of you, and then you want to communicate, and then this thing in your home language, But when you have to communicate it to another person, you have to check on your files now, which word I can use better, that I can feed this thing. Maybe it's not a correct word that you are using, that you want to say, but you're just relaying the message.
Yes.
This thing of English is creating a barrier between communicating to other people and also to yourself.
To yourself. It's a reality. You know what I mean? It's a reality. And it's just, as I've said, guys, I just want you to think about things a little bit more. You know what I mean? And that's the idea. One deeper. One deeper.
Hello, ma'am, again. Yes, ma'am, I agree with you because I get it a lot in my workplace because at where I am working, I have a Xhosa kids and the English kids. And then sometimes I feel like I want to explain this to them. And I always talk, I always speak Xhosa. And then I feel like, okay, they will understand. But if I can tell you now, all the white kids, they do understand Xhosa here and there because sometimes I am trying like to make them understand that it's not like every time we want to speak English. For instance, when I am sitting with the Xhosa kids, they always like to speak Xhosa because they said at school they are speaking English a lot. Now then we are sitting alone. There is no white kids. So can we please speak Xhosa? And then I always said, okay, I am giving you the grace that we can speak Xhosa because they are not with us now. But sometimes when they are with us, we do speak English, but we add Xhosa in it. And then, yes, you can see that they are a bit lost, but we have to explain to them. And then we can't run away from we are speaking Xhosa, you see. So there will be that time that you have to speak your language, even if you see. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you so much. Thank you for your opinion. I think there were other hands raised as well. Can you just raise your hand again and then I can get to you? Let me just go to the next one. I think there were two hands raised and then we can go to the, one deeper. Your hand is still up. I think there was another hand raised, guys. Anyone else with so this is just an interesting thing to think about, guys. It's just interesting for you to think about language, since you're now studying languages and especially the English language as such. I come in as an academic literacy person to give you maybe a different viewpoint about things and so forth. But yeah, just be cautious that there are various opinions about these things, and just understand that the language acquisition device, how it works, and how, between those age groups, you will be able to develop a certain languages, certain mother tongue languages, and then if there's a possibility that language can then go to the matric, to your grade 12, and then maybe you have English as a second language, and so when you get to universities and the universities are English, you will still be able to manage fairly well because you have a well-developed first language. Yeah. So, but it's just an interesting discussion that I normally try having with my students, as I've said. And yeah, you can think about it. We can talk about it again in another session. But yes, guys, we need to know about language if we're going to study this language. So I'm going to go quickly to my slides, back to my slides again. Goodness me, did we not mess this up? Where are we now? There we go. Okay, so you can see that, hey? So I'm not going to do second language acquisition. I'm going to do communication theory. Remember, I said to you I was going to touch on language acquisition, which we have now done. I think you now know how the different theorists, the behaviorists, the innatist, the interactionalist, and what their opinions are about language and how a child develops language automatically. It's like learning to walk and so forth. Okay, so communication theory. So this is now the second part. There's also a theory in terms of communication. Okay, so this has been, when we are born, we communicate. I've mentioned this earlier. You communicate with those around you. Babies cries if communicates hunger or discomfort to a parent. In other words, people communicate intuitively without ever studying communication. And you've seen now from what the theorists have said. When we study communication, we examine theoretically. So theory is a way of explaining and understanding a process that happens in the real world. I think I've used the same things there. Okay. So when we study communication, we examine theoretically. So theory is a way of explaining and understanding a process that happens in the real world. So that's basically what it boils down to. So again, you've seen how theory has been used with the behaviorists. You've seen how theory has been used with the innatists. You have seen how theory was used by the interactionalists. So what communication says, and this is what the theory of communication says, is that there's a model of interpersonal communication. So there's a sender, there's a message, then there's also a message medium. You can talk that way. There's an audience, and then there's feedback. Okay. And the reason why I'm doing this with you, because I need you to understand that even if you are going to be a communication person, if you are going to study this course, or even in the workplace, or wherever, guys, if you are the sender of a message, it is your responsibility to get positive feedback from your audience. So I'm sitting here and I am the sender. Okay, who's the sender here today? Natalie Lottering. This is me. Moi must make sure that you understand these things. Do you understand that? Okay, so who's my audience here today? I said 1503. So you will be 1504. You are my audience, isn't that so? And audience is a very important thing, guys. It's a very important thing because you must be aware of your audiences all the time. If you submit an assignment, for example, how many assignments have you submitted so far? Can anyone unmute themselves? Have you submitted an assignment so far?
Can I ask assignment for ENG or
ENG 1504? Yes.
Yes, ma'am, I have.
Okay, you have submitted. And what was the assignment all about? Sorry, students, I don't get access because I'm not supposed to teach content. That's for the lecturer. I'm supposed to teach you academic literacy. So I don't exactly know what your assignments look like. I just know a broad definition of what you're doing.
Assignment 1 was about meetings, like writing meetings of an agenda.
Okay.
And
so you did meetings. Wonderful.
Yes.
Okay.
The second one was also about the agenda of the meetings, but it was more of like I don't know how to put it. Like it was more of like an investigative report.
Oh, so you did a report as well, investigative reports. Okay,
yes,
so I'm going to do that with you again, guys, just as another reference. I know that you might know a lot about meetings, but you can never know enough of meetings. It's just one of meetings and report writing. Oh my goodness. I sometimes go to companies and I teach short learning programs on those things, and it takes a long time because you need to know motions, you need to know all those things. So I'm glad that you know about it, but your audience, who would be, in my case, who's my audience here? Okay, who's my audience here today is the ENG 1504 students. Isn't that so? It's specific students because obviously you do different things. So the sender, yeah. What's my message here today? Because the communication theory says that this is how the cycle works. You understand that? Your message is, I need to lecture 1504 students on language acquisition and communication theory. I'm going to take this 12 font out there. I'll do it later on with you again. Okay. So my message is that my message here today is that I need to lecture you on language acquisition and communication theory. Okay, that's my message. What medium am I using? So a medium, guys, is going to be, there's two types of mediums. You're going to have a spoken medium and you're going to have a written medium. Now, a medium is how you're going to convey, how you are going to convey your message. Okay, now, especially you that's in the working world, okay, that needs to know about reports and meetings and all those things. You know, how are you going to convey the message? How are you going to convey it? In some cases, it will be spoken medium, and sometimes it will be a spoken medium and it will be a written medium. Maybe I can make this a little bit bigger for those that might be not easy to see. Okay, let's do this. You know what I'm actually quite a bit annoyed with is that I should have started way earlier with these things because then I could have helped you with reports and meetings and all of those things. Yeah, they started a little bit late. Okay, so your medium, in this case, how are you going to convey the message? I'm conveying my message spoken, because there's a spoken medium and there's a written medium. In my case now, today, I am doing this online via a Teams meeting. So spoken, you can hear my voice. Isn't that so? There's a recording. Isn't that so? Okay, so spoken would be, your medium will either be spoken or it will be written. What is my written medium that I'm using here today? It's the PowerPoint slides that I'm using, that I'm going to email to you, hopefully by tomorrow, and then you will be able to get this information. So you have a spoken medium and a written medium. Now, there are many, many spoken mediums and there are many, many written mediums, but again, it boils down to the sender, guys. If you are the sender of the message, your audience is going to be what? Let's say you submitted an assignment, okay? Your audience, and so I'm going to add this. In my case, if you have to submit an assignment, who's going to be the sender of that message? It will be you. Isn't that so? So let's say your name is Bongi Suisa. I'm just using an example. Okay, so you are the sender. You have to make sure that your assignment is done well. If you have to send an email via your work email, who's going to be the sender? It's going to be you. So you have to make sure that sender, as a sender, I am going to make sure that my audience is going to understand what I am saying in that message. It's not the audience's responsibility to figure out what you are trying to say. That's what it boils down to. So when you submit an assignment, when the lecturer lectures, for example, I'm not sure whether they are doing online lecturing or tutoring, but if that lecturer lectures, it's her responsibility to be the sender and to make sure that you understand what is expected from you. Is that clear? When it is your turn as a sender to submit the assignment, you then become the sender. The lecturer and the markers now become the audience. Okay, so who's going to be your audience in that case when you submit the assignment, or you write an email, a work email, or you have to take minutes of the meeting? You, that's the sender. Sorry, the people that you are sending the message to, the audience, will then be the people that you are sending it to, but they don't have to figure out what you are saying. So you can't say to a friend and be a sender of a message and tell the friend, I'm going to see you tomorrow. I mean, that makes no sense, you know. You will be more clear it with a friend and say, look here, we're going to meet at this place at this time and so forth, because you don't want people to come back to you back and forth with these types of things. Is that clear? Okay, so I'm just using as an example there. So you are the audience. The audience would be what? If you have submitted an assignment, it will be your lecturer, because the lecturer is going to be the person that's going to mark your script. Isn't that okay? So the audience changes now, and then also will be maybe additional markers, okay, that will also be your audience. So you have to be clear, okay? So additional markers. If you have submitted those things, then what will be your message? Your message must be the message. You are now the sender. Remember, my message was to lecture ENG1504, Students on Language Acquisition and Communication Theory. But if you become the sender when you submit an assignment, then it means your message must be that I have looked at the assignment and I can now answer all the questions. Is that clear? That's your responsibility. That's your responsibility, guys. So the message must be that if Bongi Subisa must now say to herself, okay, I am the sender. My audience is now the lecturer and additional markers. The message that I'm trying to convey here is that I must the message is that I understand the questions that I'm being asked, questions, and I am following instructions. Okay, so that's basically what it boils down to. I'm following the instructions. I'm following. Oh my goodness. Yeah, follow. Sorry, guys. It's been a long day, and I'm following instructions. Is that clear? Okay, so now what medium are you going to use? When you submitted your report, what did you do? What medium did you use? A spoken medium or written medium when you submitted your assignment? Guys, what medium did you use? Did you write on a piece of paper, or what did you do?
The written medium.
It was a written medium, okay? But we could also have said to you, upload a voice note. Do you understand that? And that then would have become a spoken medium. But again, guys, it's this whole section that I'm doing with you now is about you understanding that if you are a sender of a message, this is what communication theory says, that you must be able to know what you are doing. Because if you are a sender, that means you have responsibility as well. If you write an email to your staff or to your colleagues or whatever, you must take responsibility for that email, that every information is done correctly. You must say to yourself, in order medium, am I using the correct medium? Because you know what, students, emails doesn't always work. I've noticed that sometimes your medium must change, because you write long emails. Sometimes your medium must be a face-to-face. It must rather be a spoken medium where you have a face-to-face discussion. Sometimes you need to pick up the phone and then have a face to or do a voice note or whatever. You know what I mean? Okay, so your medium, you must be clear as a sender that if I want positive feedback from my audience, I must be clear about the correct medium that I'm using. Is that clear? So what do we mean with that? Codes would be verbal codes again. So the medium would be spoken and written medium. We can also look at other mediums that I've got an example of mediums here. Okay, so spoken mediums, I've said here, would be an online Teams meeting. You can use a voice note. Depending on your understanding of the audience, how am I going to use the medium to get my message across effectively? You understand that? You must be able to understand there's the spoken medium. The actual meeting is a spoken medium, because there's the chairperson opens the meeting, apologies and so forth. A Netflix movie is also a spoken medium. that's just me. But in my case, it also becomes a written medium, because as I'm getting older, I've discovered I like actually watching the subtitles in English. And because sometimes I get lost with a movie, and if I watch the subtitles in English, I somehow get a better understanding of the movie. So for me, a Netflix movie, just so that me as a sender can understand it better. Some face-to-face lecturing is also spoken, because I see you, I see your body language. Like, you can see my body language, isn't that so? You can see my background in the room. So, but face-to-face is also a spoken medium. A Teams, a Zoom meeting can also be spoken mediums. TikTok, Instagram is also a spoken medium. YouTube is a spoken medium. So written mediums would be, again, in my case, I'm going to give you the online Teams recording and I'm going to give you the PowerPoint slide. So I'm using a spoken medium and I'm using a written medium. Okay, so my PowerPoint slides will be my spoken medium. In the meeting, there is an actual meeting that's taking place, but the agenda of the meeting, the minutes of the meeting, that is going to be your written medium. So sometimes a poster can be used as a written medium, a newspaper article is a written medium, a study material is written medium, and Instagram, even Instagram, TikTok, when there are people writing comments, those are written mediums. So you as a sender must be able to identify what is going to be the best medium that I'm going to use. Why is no one telling me I've written medium incorrectly? That's a barrier to communication that we will be doing next week. So, so you understand that. So there we already have your meaning. Okay. So the message, that my message, I think I've mentioned it to you before, that my message here, sorry guys, that my students must understand who I am, that I will be teaching you for the year, that I'm going to do language acquisition, and I'm going to speak about behaviorist theory, innatism. I'm going to speak about interactionalism theories, and I'm also going to do communication theory. Okay, so that's really the message there. And then the elements of interpersonal communication is that we've done so far. I think there's only two left, because we've done the sender, we've done your audience, we've done the message, a clear message. We have done the mediums, that there are two mediums. There are spoken medium, and there's also what they call a written medium. And I'm going to use this to do the codes. There's also codes that you have to use, that you can use, and some people might use just a verbal message. So the codes will be verbal and non-verbal. So verbal would be words coming out of my mouth. Is that clear? And non-verbal will be pictures. So in order to get your message across, again, students, whether it's for a meeting or something at work or workshop that you are preparing, you are going to use verbal codes and you are going to use non-verbal codes. Okay. In my case there, the guy has a stop sign. Do you see the stop sign there in his hand? But because he has the word stop written on it, that would be a verbal message. Is that clear? The written words will be the verbal message. But there's also a picture of the guy holding up the stop sign, and then obviously it looks like he works on a construction site. You know, he's got is it a hard hat or top hat? What do they call that? A hard hat, what, a hard cap, or I don't know. Okay, but that's what he's got on. So it looks like maybe he's working on a construction site. It looks like he might be a manager and so forth. So that will be then your nonverbal code. So the picture itself will be the nonverbal code, and then the written language will be whatever's written. In the second one, you can see here that there's a girl lady smiling. So this is just a nonverbal code because there are no words, but you can see that this is a formal event. Can you see nonverbal? They're all wearing suits and ties. So it looks like it's a formal event and so forth. And there's this lady that's got a smile on their face and she's a speaker. So I can speak via what I'm seeing in this nonverbal code. There's no words here, but I can see because I'm looking at their clothing, I'm looking at the expression on their faces, I'm looking at background, etc., etc. Okay, and then the last people there, you see people cheering, they are smiling, so obviously there's something exciting happening and they're congratulating somebody. And you can also look at their clothing non-verbally, what are they wearing, etc., etc. So there's a lot of clues that you can find within verbal codes and in non-verbal codes. So a verbal code is where there's actually words that you will find, and a non-verbal code is where you see pictures, but that picture you can analyze. For example, you can have a picture of a wine or brandy. There's just a picture of a bottle of wine. Then there's a car that's in an accident, and then there's crosses, you know, like white crosses everywhere. So that ad that doesn't need anything to be said verbally, because it says just the picture alone, you know what's going on. If you drink, you're going to cause an accident and then you will die. You understand that? So you as a sender must also figure out what codes am I going to use to get my message across, okay? And sometimes we need a little bit more. Then the last part that I'm going to do with you is just the context. And that means there are 5 different contexts. So the context would be how we are going to communicate. So we're either going to do it intrapersonally. So sometimes guys, when I leave here at around 7:10, I would say, woo, I'm so happy that we are done with the lecture, because now I can chill a little bit. So even with me saying, ooh, I'm so excited that we're done with the lecture. That for me is intrapersonal communication. I'm speaking to myself, guys. We speak to ourselves all the time, because sometimes the context might be, you might have said something stupid to your partner, your girlfriend, or and then you'd say, why did I say that? So sometimes our context is intrapersonal. Sometimes our context would be inter. Remember the words, guys. Inter is two. It's always two. So it's maybe when I leave here, I will go out and I will speak to my husband, and then the context will be the two of us. So I will still be the sender of the message. You will become my audience. Now, small group communication is another context. This is normally when you have meetings. So I normally say to students, when it comes to small group communication, it would be around 3 to 12 people that you have in that meeting. And that's going to be your context. So you must remember that. So public is not even what we are doing here now. In the past, this type of teaching, if I had a face-to-face conversation with you, it would have been public. But now with technology changing, it's not becoming public any longer. So public refers to public communication refers to public speaking, and it occurs in public rather than private places. Even though both send and audience are present, when public communication takes place, it largely just one-way communication and is formal in nature. So public would normally be when we are all maybe 40 people, but we're in one space, and there's maybe one-way communication. Sometimes that happens in churches, where you will see the father or the pastor preaching there in front, and then it feels like it's one-way communication all the time, depending on what type of church you are going through as well. Even a political rally, there will be all these people in one space, and then there will be a person speaking in front, or it can be any form of rally that you can get. So your context, then the last one is mass communication, and you know about that. That refers to the transmission of message to a mass audience. In my case, because you are all sitting in different places, suddenly this has not become public communication any longer. It's now become mass communication. You understand that? Okay, so mass communication was in the past, this was a one-way communication. However, the advent of social media such as Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, even SMSs and emails has led to increasing feedback opportunities. Now, mass communication is still the best way to communicate, because you can reach people in different spaces. I wasn't even aware. I was only told this afternoon that I was under the impression that I'm teaching, for example, Eastern Cape students, and now I'm realizing that my stuff is going to other provinces as well. So yeah, it just changes all the time. So yeah, mass communication. In the past, guys, there was a program called Generations. I don't know if you can still remember it, but if all of us watched Generations, I can remember, guys, and I remember it came on at 8 p.m. and there's where you have like 6 million South African watching, and then the adverts will, those adverts will come up during that time, and those adverts would normally be very expensive, because there's so many people watching. The audience is they're watching at that time. And yes, that is what mass communication is all about. Okay, so that's the context. And you know what, the reason why I'm doing this with you is because I want us to get out of this idea that when we submit an assignment, send an email in the workplace, when we submit or do minutes of a meeting or the agenda or we do reports, that it's the audience that must figure out. No, it's not the audience's responsibility. It's you as a sender. And you as a sender, you need to be very clear about who's my audience. Because if I'm taking the minutes for a departmental meeting, for an engineering departmental meeting, I need to know what's the process. What is going to be my message with those minutes? In my head, I must be able to file that. What codes am I going to use? I'm going to use written codes. Am I going to bring in figures? Am I going to bring in drafts to make it easier? Am I going to use, what type of communication context am I going to use? I'm going to use public communication or mass communication to get my message across. If you have all those things in order, guys, you will get positive feedback from your audience. Do you get that? So just to point out something, like I hear often that people say, "Ooh, you know, these people, they come to South Africa, and then there's two artists, and the one had a very successful show. You know, I think some of you might know Chris Brown. He came to South Africa, and he had two sold out shows at the FNB Stadium. DJ Coffee, he's a South African, he's our person." You know, and yet this man has made it internationally like no other. You get what I'm talking about. There are many even Afrikaans-speaking artists that's doing very well. So what is it about them? They have people, or they are the people that has made sure that as the sender, before I send out or send out the advertisement for a show, I'm going to make sure that I understand who's my audience. If you have a Chris Brown or DJ Coffee, your audience will normally be people that's born in the 80s, 90s, 2000s, maybe 2010. Yeah, those would be my audience. Okay. And because I know that's my audience, I am going to make sure that I have a clear message that this is going to be the first or the second time it's coming. It might not be coming again. This is the stadium. This is the ticket amount. This is how you book your tickets and so forth. Then they go further and they say to them, "Oh, what mediums are we going to use?" No, we're going to use social media, because the people in the 80s, 90s, 2000, they know a little bit about social media. The people in the 70s, and which social media are those 80, 90 people going to use in 2000? They use TikTok, they use some of them use, most of them use Facebook as well. But I mean, Instagram is the in thing. You know what I mean? Instagram, TikTok, those. So they know that that is the medium I'm going to use in order for people to sell the tickets. You understand? If it's an older person that's coming in, guys, someone, let's say, what is it now? Who's still alive? Maybe some of you might know George Benson, you know, from America. He's an old singer. They're not necessarily going to use all these platforms. They might use Facebook, because they say older people use Facebook the most. Younger people use the other platforms the most. But if you understand that your medium is used correctly, then that's going to be a success. You understand? You also know how to use the codes. You know, you're going to have pictures and you're going to have the written language. Some of people might just might use both. And then they understand the context. They know it's mass communication, so they must get it out to everybody. And then what happens? You know, your audience is going to respond positively. And that is how you have two stadiums. That you have two shows, like in the case of Chris Brown, we had two shows on a Friday and on a Saturday that was sold out. 95,000 people were at those two. 95,000 people per concert, guys. We're looking at like 180,000 people that attended that. And you know what was so amazing about that? I think the DJ that they used, so they knew, they studied their audience very well. The DJ that they used was a DJ, I don't know if it was from Africa, because they wanted to include the DJ. But one of the things that they knew that they had to play when Chris Brown was not singing was Sister Bettina. They knew if they can just bring in that song, the crowd is going to go crazy. They knew their audience well. And because of that, the concerts were successful. So if anyone tells me that, oh, this didn't work, then I'm going to say to them, but you as a sender didn't focus on what you were supposed to do. Okay? So guys, any questions so far? Especially for those in the workplace with challenges that you might experience due to this? This is a long session, guys. I'm going to finish up soon. Quickly. And no questions? Okay, let's go on. And then I'm going to just do the last part. And then that will be our questions that I'm going to ask quickly. And then you can just respond by shouting out the answers. These are very basic questions. And I will do a session with you on an activity next time I see you. Okay, so should the sender or the audience take primary responsibility for the success of any communication? You can just unmute yourself and shout out the answer. Should the sender or the audience take primary responsibility? Who must take responsibility? You can unmute yourself.
It's the sender.
The sender. There we go. Beautiful. The sender. Guys, emails. You are the sender. You must make sure that those emails are correct. Is that clear? Okay. Why is it important to consider the needs of your audience before conveying a message? Why is it important to consider the needs of your audience before conveying a message? Why is it important? Because what do you want? You want to consider the needs of your audience, because if your audience responds, because you're going to get positive feedback from your audience. If you convey all the needs of your audience, you will get positive feedback from your audience. Is that clear? So if you are taking the minutes of the meeting and you consider your audience and you send it out, yes, it will mean that your audience, you will get positive feedback from your audience. Okay, explain the difference between a verbal and a non-verbal code. A verbal code would be the written language. Isn't that so? Okay, and non-verbal, someone can just grab it. What non-verbal is?
The body language.
Sorry?
The body language.
No, verbal is about the written language, and non-verbal code will be the picture that you see, the pictures that you see. Okay, something that represents the picture. It's just normally a picture. Is that clear? Okay, there's no written words on it. Okay, then identify a spoken and a written medium. A spoken medium would be what? What are we doing here? A Teams online session is a spoken medium. A written medium would be the PowerPoint slides that I'm going to send to you now. Because those, as my audience, I'm taking into consideration that, as a sender, I'm taking into consideration that in order for you to be successful, you need to get the slides, the PowerPoint slides, which is a written medium, but you also need to see the spoken medium or what I'm saying as I'm teaching you. Okay, and then the last one, what indicates success in the communication approach? What indicates success? Easy, guys. By now you should know that. What indicates success in the communication approach? You can just scream it out. It's got to do with your audience. What indicates success in the communication approach? It would be positive feedback from your audience. Sorry? Hi?
Now, I was saying the positive feedback.
Yes, there we go. Positive feedback. Thank you, my dear, for responding to that one. So positive feedback from your audience, and that essentially, guys, is going to become your reality. That is what the theory says. Essentially, ideally, I am just going to know I'm the sender. I'm going to know my audience. I know my message. I know what mediums to use. I know what codes to use. I know what context to use. And then I'm going to get positive feedback from my audience. And then I'm going to be happy because no one's going to complain. So guys, I'm going to stop here. It's now 7:05. You must be finished. Some of you that have just come from work and trying to do all of this. It's a lot to take in initially, but it's so important for you to understand language acquisition as English specialists or people that want to know more about English. It's so important for you to know about even theories. It's important for you to know about communication theories and so forth. So I'm going to say, you must enjoy the rest of the evening. You must enjoy tomorrow. That's Friday. And I will see you next week. Next week, it's Thursday? Yes, I will see you next week, Thursday. Okay, people, I'm going to say my goodbyes to you now. Have a wonderful evening. Any questions that you would like to ask before I go? Any questions? Nothing? Okay. Okay, I'm going to leave now. Thank you, students. Bye-bye.
Thank you, ma'am. Bye.
Bye-bye.